the planet. Notice I didn't say globe. Did not upset the flat earthers. What's your favorite? We'll start off, Simon. What's your favorite story of the week, mate? What have you been tracking? See how what you got.
I don't. Right, I don't. Yeah, I don't tend to track. You know, I don't sit every morning and look at the news. I don't do that. I think the the most interesting thing for me, if we want to look at it, is basically the weather storm that's hit California and that area. I think for me that's
tell us about that, because I'm in the dark with that one. I haven't seen that.
Well, it's a massive snowstorm, and it's almost unprecedented for California to have that. And everyone thinks, of course, it's the bad guys who do it, but in this instance, it's not. It's the good guys who are literally keeping bad people penned in. Even 4x4s, even sort of rough terrain vehicles are struggling. And so if you don't want to use an EBS and you don't want to, have martial law, the best way is to literally create a weather system that locks everyone in their houses, keeps them all locked up, and you get on and do what you want to do. So that is, for me, the most interesting. While people are talking about other things are important, but they're missing that one out completely. Whereas the earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria, that was a bad guy operation.
Yeah.
And, so both sides are at it.
I like that. I've been tracking the long-term goals of this chemical spill in Ohio, because I saw a really good video for the viewers that didn't watch my show yesterday. I was saying, okay, what they did was they pulled apart the chemistry that these chemicals were and how they all mixed together. And basically, long term, this is what I've got, Simon. So let's see if it correlates what you've got. Long term, there's no real threat to that.
There's no harm.
No harm. They're going to disperse naturally. One of them actually gets broken down by sunlight. The one that settles on the water makes it look like an oily water.
I can also tell you that dead fish from other locations have been dropped into that location, and then reporters brought along to see the dead fish.
Shit, they're sneaky, aren't they? Yes. It's basically a land grab. What they're doing is they're going to convince people that this land is toxic. It's super fertile, this land. It produces a lot of food and other products for consumption. Also, this is where a lot of the Amish farmers, there's a big community of Amish there, and they're going to try to grab the land, move everybody out, tell them it's toxic under a government law saying the land's toxic, we have to move you out, and put them in 15-minute cities. So it's one very long-winded trick, basically. Is that what you
I totally agree. You've got it right, but they won't be able to roll that plan out. And on the back of that, of course, is this terrible train crash in Greece.
I saw that the train had hit another train, a goods train in the middle of the night. There's about 80 people, or is it more now? As it climbed the injury toll?
So it's quite high, and I think they've arrested one of the station masters. So we wait to see what that's about. But if you look at the number of train derailments in the last 2 to 3 weeks, it is phenomenal. And it's all people like BlackRock and all the rest of it who own these trains. So, it's just beyond coincidence that these deep state organizations own this rolling stock.
Absolutely. I saw the percentage about 1,860% higher than the average, even more. That's on a low one. That was only there was a few more derailing incidents reported after that, so they sent the statistics even higher. Simon, interesting you brought up BlackRock, because I saw an interesting story. BlackRock have made a bid to buy Ancestry.com.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. Now, Ancestry.com, I was just talking about this, sitting around with Lucy before we started broadcasting. I said, you know what? I've always been guided. All of these official government things like voters poll and get a debit card and credit card, I've always sidestepped them. And when I first saw Facebook, I said, that's a government op. That's a site that it's CIA. That all they're doing is letting all these idiots put exactly what they do, who they know, what they like to do, what the music is, where the political stances are, and they're putting all of that online. It'll save the CIA billions of dollars a year in investigating people.
Yeah,
we know that now.
Yeah.
So Ancestry.com is basically tickling people's egos to say, do you really want to know where you're from, your ancestors, and why not send us a sample of your DNA and we'll never share it with anybody else. Now it's going into the hands of BlackRock, and they're going to grab all those millions of people who've uploaded all their DNA material and information. Yeah. Oh my God, is that a disaster waiting to happen?
It is. I'm just going to get a drink of water. I won't be a second, Mahoney. Just 2 seconds. Won't be a minute.
It's on the vodka again, and he can't wait.
No water. You could.
I've ordered a cup of tea from Lucy, but I don't know where she is. So I start screaming like Basil Fawlty. Table! So Ancestry.com, guys, and I realize there's probably some people watching that have done it, and I'm sorry to be poking you and making fun, but if you have the possibility of taking back your genetic sample or destroying your evidence, I would highly suggest, not evidence, but destroying your information, I would highly suggest you do it, because I saw that from the very start. All they're doing is mouth swabbing and keeping it. I understand.
That was a very quick snifter.
Yeah, wasn't it? You need to get yourself a little hip flask, mate. So you can just.
Yeah, I know. I don't play golf though. I think the thing is, remember Q said that so many strange things, mad things, crazy things happen, and it's to the point now where there is so much. It's not just hard to follow it; it's actually hard to understand what's going on, what links into what, and it's also hard to know now who's doing what. Is this a good guy operation or a bad guy operation? And some is very obvious and some's not. But it's got to the point where the normies, they're just walking around shaking their head because they've lost the plot. And that's, I suppose, is a good thing, because it's making them question everything. So I suppose in a way it's good, but in another way it's not so good, because the information that we want out there is not getting out there. I mean, Charlie sent me some really good stuff this week on the videos, and I said, yeah, but what a shame it's not on mainstream.
That's the thing.
That's the problem.
Always, it's never on mainstream media, is it? Huh? But again, more and more people. I've been saying this all week, Simon, with my shows. Yesterday, I do a live show on Tuesday and Friday. So yesterday's show, what I did was I said, normal people making videos was basically the theme. So you got an average housewife, average working class guy, a trucker, and then all of a sudden they're getting what I call the head scratch. They're going, hold on a second, this shit don't make any sense. And the normal people are now making videos and putting them out there through their own networks of social media friends and family about what their experiences are.
That's interesting.
I saw a brilliant one. One of the senators has been grilling the Twitter executives about shadow banning. And did you see that? She led him right up the street. She says, were you responsible for authorizing my shadow banning? And he basically said, I'm not. I have no recollection of that. I said, well, apparently, according to your job specification, you have to authorize all of this shadow banning. So the question is, Simon, what do you see that they're trying to do with all of this badgering and exposure of what was going on through Twitter, through the Hunter laptop scandal, the Russian collusion, and the shadow banning, everything else? Where's this going to go?
None of this could have worked if the Democrats had held control of the House of Congress. And so the plan of the White Hats was, it wasn't so much the Senate that mattered, it was Congress, because Congress is the more powerful house, and it's the one that can form the committees to do the investigations. And so as soon as the Republicans, well, the Trump side really, took control of that, all of these other actions could take place, and the normies will understand it as part of a normal democratic process. So in other words, the House authorizes this, it authorizes that, and it's just seen as just another effect of that. So unfortunately, from my perspective, it means that it's a huge delay. But from ordinary people's, unawake and unaware people's, this is exactly what they expect to see. And it's really frustrating for all of your members, my members, and other people who are awake to have to go through this when we've already been through it. We already know it. And unfortunately, we have been brought down to the speed of the slowest. That's the problem. And so all of this is just, for me, it's nonsense to convince the majority of what's happening. And it's painfully slow.
Yeah, I see that. But at least it's moving forward. You know, being dead in the water with no wind in your sails, at least we can see that there is some results, and they are getting the media hits, the numbers from private individuals. People are forwarding the information, because some of the grilling that they've been getting is like, oh, I mean, I was imagining sitting in their seats, you know. I mean, they are
one of the big things, Mahoney, literally, is the Sunday Times newspaper in Great Britain.
Yeah.
The BBC actually now reporting that the FBI believe that the virus did in fact escape from the Wuhan laboratory. So that's finally now officially in the mainstream. And that, I think, is the game changer, because it's mainstream. And, you know, that's been said for years, but now Sunday Telegraph, I beg your pardon, Sunday Times and the BBC reporting that. So that's a big shift.
Yeah. Reporting that Trump was always going on about how he was pronouncing it China, such as the town in Ukraine, which I always took as a big hint of where it was actually developed. It's from China. You can see how many biolabs were now in the Ukraine. They haven't really started denying it anymore. Most of the information's been leaked from the White House anyway. What do you feel is the reason, you know, that we're talking about there's so much going on, and all this distraction about UFOs and bloody Chinese spy balloons. One of the biggest stories was that the White House have leaked the information about them admitting that they were going to blow up the pipeline. Now, we talked about it last week. Has there been any developments on this? Has Putin bitten the hook and talked about any retaliation or anything for them, the Americans and the Norwegians, conspiring to blow up this pipeline and went into Germany with butane gas?
No, that's really just for the public's digestion. That's, you know, that's another thing about showing that the elite, that the governments are not there for the people, and they will play politics for their own. I think what we should be looking at is the Russians taking Bakhmut in the next few days. Now that's a big turning point, and public is so unfortunately just so unaware. I mean, yippee doo, they've sent 4 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. 4, and it's the whole thing is, you know, I'm a student of history, and I'm sure lots of people, you know, listening are students of history. And if you are half decent in your understanding of it, you would realize that this whole war, although it's not called a war by the Russians, this whole situation is just a complete and utter joke. And I seriously wonder if some of the Ukraine military are actually working with the Russian military, and that Ukraine is split between 2 halves. You know, if you read history, Russia doesn't fight a war like this. I was trying to explain to someone who just didn't understand. As it goes at the moment, the war in Ukraine is literally an artillery war and a drone war, and 12 men sneaking up to the front trenches, firing a few shots and sneaking back again. That is exactly what's going on. And all the Russians are doing is using what we call a creeping barrage of artillery to force the Ukrainians out of a village or a town, and then they just go in. That's not a war. That's not how Russia defeated Nazi Germany. And so I've always said that what's happening in the Ukraine, Mahoney, is in lockstep with what's happening with the RV, what's happening with the political situation in America, what's happening with the takedown of the elite. So they don't want any one aspect getting ahead of anything else. They're trying to keep it all about right, so that when one goes, they all go. And I take my hat off to Putin, because, you know, he's suffered this ignominy for a whole year. For a whole year, the mainstream media have basically devilized him, and the vast majority of the ordinary people believe that crap. So this is why I get cross, because I want all those biolabs to come out in the mainstream news. I want the connection between Hunter Biden and the Chinese firms, the communist Chinese firms, and all the bribery that's gone on. And, you know, we'll never hear about the underground tunnels and the children. That's obvious that isn't going to come out anytime soon. But the fraud can, and the bioweapon can. And this is the problem. We are at this pathetically slow game when we know exactly what needs to come out, but and they're right, the general public are not yet ready for it.
They're not ready for it at all.
No.
You got to equate it like having a really fast car, but having to follow an old lady. You know, when you're driving down the lane, you go, I'm really in a hurry, and there's an old lady or a tractor. Sometimes I hit farm machinery because I'm in rural areas in Spain, and I'm like, oh, it's like 25 kilometers to the next place.
So funny.
It's true, isn't it? You just want to put your foot down, but it takes a very patient man to do that because, as you say, Sam, he has the manpower, the capability, the technology to end this in maybe 3-4 days. He could do it in a good weekend if he pushed properly.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
So he's got all of that, but he's like, please hurry up. Come on. This is killing me. They're making me look stupid. I'm the worst leader in Russian history. Stalin is spinning in his lead-lined coffin now.
It was lead-lined as well.
I know, yeah, when they put him on display. What about this one? Are the dropping of water levels connected to the flooding of the dams? I don't know anything about the dropping of...
some of them are. Some are reservoirs. Some are literally reservoirs. And what the White Hats have done is they've just literally used that rather than create a rainstorm. And so the local authorities are reporting that global warming is making the water levels drop. No, it isn't. Literally, the water is being piped through to flood dams out. But it's usually lakes that are used for reservoirs that they've targeted for that. Yeah, the White Hats are doing that.
Any comments about the Brunson case? It was a bit of a change in that this week. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Well, look, I mean, I actually did send an email off. I sent an email off to the Supreme Court because it made it clear that you did not have to be an American citizen to send an email because the situation in America affected the world. So I did. I sent. They did a standard email, and I put my name to that, and I sent that off. But I didn't do the next thing, which was the affidavit, because I think you had to be an American citizen to do that. But at least I did that, and I showed my support. The difficulty here, I think, let's be quite harsh here, is that the public, many of the public believed, they got behind it, they believe in their Supreme Court, and so they petitioned it, and they had a slap in the face. And I think what that does is it actually shows them that the Supreme Court is not there for them. There isn't a single agency or organization in America that's there for the people. Now, what I think will happen more likely is of interest is the SCOTUS overturning the debt forgiveness for students. You see, between 20 and 25 million American students have applied to have their student loans removed. Now, if the court turns around and says, actually, that's illegal, which I know it is, it's against the Constitution. So what you're going to have is between 20 and 25 students absolutely fed up with the Supreme Court, the system, but you're going to have 300 million American adults really pleased, because how it's split America is American adults are saying, well, I had to pay my student fees. Nobody gave me my money back. Yeah. So why are you giving these kids back their money? It's really been quite divisive. So the White Hats will win-win here, because the older population will like what SCOTUS has done, but the kids will feel betrayed, and they'll also see Biden as very weak, that he couldn't get it through. So I know it's really painful, but I think on balance, this whole Brunson case is very helpful to moving the agenda forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, is it something to do with Antifa as well? Because a lot of the Antifa supporters and demonstrators were people in that age group. You know, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of broken promises. Is not going to make any friends. And again, with an election looming pretty soon, as you get to our age, Simon, you realize that the time goes like this. So, you know, people say, well, that's 18 months away yet. Well, it's going to go very quickly. Thoughts on why Trump was in Ohio? Because he said some very strange things. And there was some other, I don't know if you caught this, but there was a lot of little slip-ups. Trump arrived in Air Force One. Mm-hmm. My presidency, FEMA, I've ordered FEMA to help you. Explain some of these. Were they slip-ups or were they little drops of intel?
Well, they were agreed with TikTok and others who were covering it, that beforehand the White Hats had an arrangement. that they wanted to drop that hint. You see, it doesn't mean too much to Europeans, but to Americans, hopefully most Americans realize that only POTUS can fly in Air Force One. And
Yeah.
he was announced as getting out of Air Force One. Now, the important thing was he turned up with water and canned food and rice and stuff. And he said that I've authorized, FEMA to do this. And only POTUS can, because it's a federal, can order FEMA to do anything. So it was a PR stunt to literally show the difference between him and Biden. So Biden, didn't really care. He didn't allow any emergency federal funding to that area. So Trump was to show that, he did care. He was there. And also he was there to provide some food. It was a contrast between the two styles of president. Mm-hmm. That was the point of it. Now, the other important point, which we picked up a little while ago, and has not deliberately been carried, not just by the mainstream, but by intel reporters right across the planet, on the 21st of February, the official pandemic ended.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, actually. I'm glad you reminded me. Yeah.
Right. So that's important, because a lot of actions were put on hold because the pandemic legislation required domestic rules and regulations to be not binned, but to be put on ice. And on the 21st of February, that changed. And so what we've got now is normal government ticking along, which means that a lot of the stuff that was on hold will come forward, which is about removing Biden. And on the spiritual side, particularly in the ancient Indian texts, but in other cultures' texts as well, the 1st of March is when we leave from the world the lifetime of darkness, and we move into the golden age. So there should be a very strong connection between gold-backed currency, asset-backed currency, and the 1st of March, the golden age from a spiritual point of view. So there's a lot that's not being covered and picked up by even the intel boards that is ticking along quietly.
I saw a video from a very good researcher, woman. She says, here's the number of the government official filing report, .gov.us. And it was basically impeachment, Joe Biden, dated January 2021. And because this has just ended now, they couldn't proceed with that. So quite a few of the psychics, Lucy's been talking about the middle of the month, around the 17th, there's going to be 2 countries that are going to have political shockers happen. And China and America are the 2 countries. So if that's true, if there was an impeachment file charged, she was actually saying, here it is, go look it up yourself, Joe Biden, charged with impeachment, everything went on the hold because of the pandemic, which has now ended on the 21st of February. Trump went straight to Ohio. When did he get in Ohio? Was it the 21st, 22nd?
22nd. It was a day
22nd. It was his first real engagement.
Yes, it was his first engagement as president officially. Let me just put it to you like that. Yeah.
There was something else interesting as well. There's 3 stars that are lined up as well. They haven't been in that configuration since the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, someone did say, but I can't remember what they were.
I think they were Mars, Jupiter. I'm just guessing. Right. It just makes me sound more intelligent. I'm just going to throw.
No, it's around that. But you're right. It's something
Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter, maybe. All in alignment. Haven't been like that for the last. When did
it's
Mars?
It's the fall. It's the fall of a corrupt empire. That's what the link is. Yeah,
absolutely. So interesting stuff going on. Mm-hmm. Also getting a lot of chatter on the psychic world about Gaia, the planet, fighting back. A lot of earthquake eruptions and volcanic eruptions, lots of rain, lots of water, lots of flooding. The month of March is going to be quite a turmoil-ridden month, apparently, not just on the political front, but on Gaia fighting back and taking back some of the things that she's unhappy about. We'll wait and see on that. Most of it does tend to come true. And we seem to be already started with this weather system moving through California. How far south in California did that weather system go, Simon?
It went quite far, and it also extended to the west. I think what I would say is that you're right as far as I'm concerned. What the good guys do is they enhance what the planet is doing, and then they try and direct it. So it's natural. It's the earth, as you say, having a say. But
Mhm.
what the good guys can do is push it in a different direction. And what's odd about these things is that you literally could be on one block and there's just no snow at all, and you just go the other side and there is. So it's not falling in a natural way, in the sense that it's being artificially directed. But this time the good guys are directing it, not the bad guys.
Good, good, good. All right, slightly change of subject. Do you want to take a quick sip of water there, Simon? You must.
No, I already had that when I went
You
out.
want? You got. I haven't even got a cup in front of me. Normally, I would.
Oh, bless you.
Let's go back across the Atlantic now to your home country. There's a new story that's been leaked out with Matt Hancock. Now, to refresh people's memory,
My home country is, of course, Africa.
Oh, that's true. I apologize.
I wasn't born in Britain, but that doesn't matter. Go on.
True.
I live here. I live in this.
Where are you living then? Matt Hancock was the Secretary of Health during the height of the COVID lockdowns in the UK. Very detested man. He was dismissed, or he resigned in a little bit of shame because he got caught with his pants down in the halls of power by having an affair with a married woman. And he, since his slipping out the back door, he then did a reality show, Get Me Out of Here, I'm a Celebrity. And now what's going on, Simon? There's some leaked WhatsApp messages about him and the care home scandal. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, we know that the White Hats somehow accessed that. It was secret CCTV cameras that videoed him with that woman. Under normal circumstances, that would never have got out. But they got that video and they released it. And that was the beginning of them trying to bring him into the public eye, because he had been so positive about COVID-19, positive in the sense that it was real and that he was pushing for lockdowns and all the rest of it. So it was payback, really. Now, what on earth that celebrity TV thing was about, I have no idea. The only thing I can imagine is somebody with a white hat on said to him, if you do this and make a fool of yourself, we'll be lenient with you. That's all I can imagine. Now, the what's yet to come out is the care homes and the connection to many governments, both Conservative and Labour, and possibly Liberal in coalition, I'm not sure, where there have been hushed up actions regarding politicians and children. So it may well be that they're coming at it now from this angle, because Matt Hancock is so discredited that the public will accept that sort of thing. Whereas when someone's standing there, they appear to be squeaky clean. There's quite a long battle to, drag them to a point where they resign. Well, this guy's already resigned. He's already shown that he's not a serious person from a politician's point of view. And therefore, I think there's just another angle to try and open up. There was the Finchley Road issue. There have been several places. And I think they're just coming at it from that. So what I said to some people was, 1 week, the White Hats operate on one news story, then they'll change it, then they'll put another news story, because the White Hats are, by and large, in control of the news output now, by and large. Not totally, but by and large.
Well, what was this Finsbury Road? Was that the child sex scandal where there were satanic rituals were going on and they were put in care homes? Yeah. Funny enough, the mother of those children reached out to Lucy recently.
Okay.
Looking for some help, because they took the kids off her. I believe it was her. I think she said something like that. We get so many...
Well, what they didn't want was children telling the truth.
Yeah, I've seen the video footage. It's shocking. For the audience that don't know what it's about a boy and a girl and a sister who are saying, Daddy used to take us down and we were forced to stab people. And then the touching of the penises started. And it was so elaborate and so detailed on the video footage. You see, no way they could make that shit up.
No. You see, the thing is that's more than just. We don't want to. I don't want to upset your audience, but that's more than just that. You see, when you want to program a child, MK Ultra, what you do is you take an elite kid and then you take an urchin, and then what happens is that the urchin is murdered in front of the elite child.
Yeah.
And then what they do is they put I won't say the animal because that's a programming name, but they put a skin of an animal over the elite child, and they make that child believe that they've killed that other child, and that creates an alternate personality in the elite child, and they then control it. Now that child could then go on to work for the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, could go on to Hollywood, but is designed to make a lot of money for the system, and though they control that child as that child grows up through these alternate personalities. And before I created Connecting Consciousness, you know, my job, shall we call it that, was deprogramming these children. They would come from all over the world. Their parents would send them to me, and I would do what I needed to do. That's, I think, one of the reasons why the White Hats took such an interest.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I didn't know that, Simon. Was it called MK Ultra all over the world? It was the same program, just operating in different countries, NATO-based countries, I presume. No.
No. It's a bit like medbeds. There's only one place or one organization. What would happen is they would have CIA satellite operations. So you're right, Mahoney, but they wouldn't. They didn't trust. They didn't. If you're going to do something really like that, they would put them in Long Island, or they would put them on the continental American part. However, there were substations, and you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, the Tavistock Institute in London closed down, and in Brighton, where I lived, there was an annex for the Tavistock Institute, and there are some fantastic good actors today who, like me, for some strange reason, ended up living in Brighton. And I know 3 of them actually went to the Tavistock Institute and were, you know, mind controlled to become the great people they are. So I don't expect the general public to ever be shown that. But the bit that I think they want the public to understand is that there's been this satanic child abuse endemic in political parties for years. From the elite, from the banking world to the Hollywood world to the political. Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more, you know, I see the memes out there and I hear it in conversations, you know, it's becoming more and more. Let's change the subject. That's going to, although it's a subject very dear to our hearts, I think we'll keep it, but that's going to upset everyone's psyche, that. So I'm going to move on from that, Simon. No disrespect. No, it's fine. Look, you know, I think what we have to do is we have to cover it, but not in such a detail as it.
Yeah. Let me just go back to one little funny thing about Matt Hancock. I'll remind the viewers. Matt Hancock was live on a news channel, Breakfast TV, and they were showing the very first person who had who was getting the COVID-19 vaccination, and his name was William Shakespeare.
Yeah,
a storyteller. They said, "Yes, this is William Shakespeare. Oh, I'm really happy that I'm getting the first vaccination of the country." And Hancock was like this. He was just laughing because he didn't know that was a total. In English, we say piss take, a total joke. And he was trying to cover up. He says, he was crying with laughter. And he says, "Oh, I'm just so happy. I'm so moved that we've actually got the vaccines out so quickly." But he was cracking up laughing because it's a total, only the utter moron wouldn't see the irony, in that name, William Shakespeare.
Well, look, we know Charlie's talked about when we had the petrol situation, they had a guy who was interviewing someone on a gas station forecourt, and his name was Phil McCann, and then they cut to a police constable. That's it, a police constable who was talking about the terrible crime in London, and his name was Robin Banks. And just 2 days ago, there was a BBC article about the shortage of fruit and vegetables, and it went something like this. And I'm sure that, you know, if you know a bit about vegetables. So first of all, it was, do you think that this situation is the tip of the iceberg? Then it was, do you think prices are going to rocket? And then it was, do you think it's crunch time for salad? So if ordinary people can't understand that this food shortage is entirely manipulated, just like the toilet rolls that we went through, that was totally manipulated, just like all of these things. And Charlie's right when he says that people who are writing this, they're getting desperate because people aren't really responding in large enough numbers, and they're becoming more and more bizarre with their linkages. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Mahoney. It's just someone's having a great deal of fun.
Yeah. one of my favorites was, it's a bit off subject, but after not really, 9/11 hits. And Bruce Willis said he's not going to fly to London to do some premiere he was going to do because he's scared to get on an airplane. And the British press, they called him Cry Hard. And what's her name? Brad Pitt's wife. What's her name?
I don't know.
Judy. What's her name, man? I've forgotten.
I don't know. One of your audience will write in their box.
Yeah.
Tell you.
She. Oh my God, my mind's gone blank.
Oh dear. Have a drink.
Have a drink. She was adopting all these children at the time, and it's.
I know who you mean.
Yeah. She did Tomb Raider, and my mind's gone blank. Angelina Jolie. Thank you, Lucy. Here's my cup of tea. Thank you.
You'll be fine now.
Angelina Jolie. So when she was adopting all these children, the British press rechanged her to Womb Raider, which I thought was quite funny. So they are good at coming up with these jokey little things to give everybody a hint of what's going on. But man, you got to be an idiot not to see it. William Shakespeare and Phil McCann is quite.
That's brilliant. It's very good.
Right, Simon, we'll move on. What about? Do you know anything about the Air Force Base in Minnow? The Air Force Base at the some Air Force commanders who were relieved of duty for lack of confidence. Do you know anything about that? I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't about that because there's actually been several where white hats have the last 2 weeks. I don't know when that was, but it's been the last 2 weeks that they've removed certain individuals right across America and the European Union for not being competent. But what I can tell you is because they wouldn't swear an oath of allegiance. So there have been a number of military people who have been approached by the white hats and said, you need to swear a new oath because you've got a new government, etc. And those that have refused have been removed from their positions. So although I don't know that's a particular case, that's what's been happening. And the other thing I'll just quickly say is that, because you did say about Britain, we know that last week, special forces, American military special forces, entered the United States Embassy in London, sent everybody home, and military completely run the United States Embassy. I don't know that the ambassador was sent home, but a lot of these military people had to be trained to stamp passports, to look for lost dogs, and all the rest of it that you do when you're in a consulate or an embassy. But what's interesting is that at this time, a number of embassies the civilian staff have been sent home and the military have taken over. It's a short-term operation at the moment.
That's super interesting. Now, I saw that they posted it was some sort of security threat, maybe in a terrorist attack or bomber threat or something, and they said all the staff have to move away from the windows.
Yeah.
And they showed some footage. So that's really interesting. Do you know any of the other embassies that were affected by this?
No, I would think nearly every embassy has been changed over, simply because, and I was explaining that in 1969, anybody remembers it, I do. In 1969, supposedly, some very brave men went to the moon.
Yeah.
But we know they never did, and they know they never did. But there were only at the time 2 telescopes on the Earth that could actually track that far out in space. One was Jodrell Bank in Britain and the other one was in America. So the National Security Agency came into Jodrell Bank, sent all of the British staff scientists home, ran Jodrell Bank until there was a supposed splashdown, and then they departed and let the Brits back in. So the Americans have a history of taking over all facilities that could report on anything that they're doing that they can't control. So they just put their own personnel in there. And finally, when I went to, I've given that tour of the Space Radar Base a long time ago now, 2013, and I got my tour, and it was, sure enough, it was run by the Royal Air Force. But as I've said on my podcast 10 years ago, behind the glass doors were 2 Americans and Flight Lieutenant Wicks, who was leading me around, showing me around this radar base. He said that what happens is that when a UFO that we won't go down the alien route today, don't worry, but when a UFO is detected, all of the Royal Air Force personnel get up, walk out of the radar, the control room, lock the door, the glass doors open, the two Yanks come out, they run and control everything. When they've dealt with the situation, they go back in and the Brits come back in again. So America rules the world. America runs the world in every aspect, the military do. And it's absolutely normal for them to go into a foreign country and say to everyone, out, we're running the show. And that's what happens.
I wonder what they're covering up, though. What are they trying to stop leaking? What bits of
I don't think it's about that. I think it's about, as we approach the RV, as we approach a number of issues, embassies have connections with business. They have connections with local government. They have all of that. And sometimes embassies know more what's going on than the BBC. So I think what they're trying to do is to say, this is a node, a nexus point for information coming in. Let's make sure we've got military people in there so that nothing goes out.
When did that happen, Simon?
2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago.
So they're still in there now, you presume?
Yes, they are.
Wow. Tell you what, you've got some good stuff, you. Would that have tied in just before the earthquakes hit and they brought everybody home?
That was different. That first of all, there's been some misunderstanding of that. The sensors that they have all over the earth can detect an earthquake coming some 10, 20 minutes before it hits, because there are telltale vibrations that are sent out. And the oil pipelines were only turned off something like 2 to 3 minutes before the earthquake hit in Turkey. And that was not because they were tipped off, it was because the sensors activated and warned them they should do it. The key here is, as you said, is personnel being removed prior to that. And that's the key. And that was simply people who they value very highly and didn't want them caught up in being injured or hurt. Look at my grandfather. My grandfather was in Britain in 1939. The government came to my grandfather and said, we can't afford for you to be in London and be blitzed by the bombs. We're going to get you out. And they offered him a job as a diplomat. He went to India for the whole period of the war. So they will move out key people that they feel have got a plan for in the next 10, 20 years. It's very common for them to get people out of hotspots and then put them back in when it's cooled down.
Yeah. Wow. Great show tonight. I hope you're enjoying it, folks. Where we're going to go next, nobody knows this, Simon. It's like a roulette wheel with you. You go and whatever the ball for. We should put all the questions on a roulette ball. Just spin it.
Yeah, you could do that. It would be fun. I'd actually enjoy that.
It'd be good, wouldn't it?
Give it a try next time.
Simon, we saw a lot of buses outside Washington, sheriff buses. Do you know anything that was going on inside the White House recently?
The point is that America has always had very different from Britain, totally different from the rest of the world. But the connection between the sheriffs and the marshals has always been much more of a grassroots. And you can deputize, you can swear in good guys to be marshals, etc. And so if you don't want to use city police, or you don't want to get people's attention by putting military vehicles in there, then you can use the sheriffs. I mean, for instance, I'm sure I'm not breaking any rules now because it was 2 years ago, but it was the marshals and the sheriffs who were responsible for organizing secret meetings throughout America and bussing in key people, so pastors, lawyers, anyone who was a white hat or had leanings towards being a white hat, would find marshals or sheriffs turning up on their doorstep and saying, you're coming with us, almost like a protective custody. And then them getting on a bus, going to a secret location, everybody going in, having to put their mobile phones into a plastic bag, and then having presentations, then being put back into the community. So the marshals and the sheriffs are used because of their very strong connection to the people and the Constitution. Oh, but your question is, they're still using the underground part of the White House for trials, military trials. And so a lot of people are being brought in blacked out windows, and sometimes they'll bring them in, and all the cameras look on it, and then the buses go, then the cameras go, but then they bring the people actually out, put them in ordinary cars and drive them off. So there's a lot of games going on with that.
Yeah, it takes me to the next question about Gitmo and what was the other one? The Nuremberg trials. Do you still think Nuremberg trials are going to go ahead for human, crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity?
No, I know that's probably very, very disappointing. If they were going to go ahead, why are people being tried in secret now and being executed?
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy the story that's been put out, which is, yeah, but all these are going to be videoed and they're going to be shown. I tell you why that can't happen is because good people have a sense of justice. And if you present them with a video of someone who was executed, there's a feeling that wasn't right. They want to be almost like live TV. They want to sit there and hear the arguments play out. And then, they would come to a conclusion as to whether that person was guilty or not guilty. But if you say to somebody, actually, they've been executed and we're going to now play this video and you're going to see it.
It's just a stretching. They want to feel they're part of the jury. So they would have come to the conclusion as well.
That's the way it is. But the reality is that if there were going to be these Nuremberg things, why would you do it like this? Why wouldn't you just arrest people, hold them, and then do it for real? The fact that they're doing it quietly, privately, is because they don't want the public to know. Look, I've said this before, and I don't think many people perhaps follow me on it, but I'm going to try once more with this. America is the policeman of the world, whether we like it or not. And if the truth, the full truth about what you and I know and your audience knows comes out, America can never walk, a representative can never walk into a room and tell any other country what to do, because they'll just point at America and say, you have no right to lecture us. You cannot tell us what to do. Look what's gone on in your own country. So that's the first point. And the second point is my old sweet shop, my candy shop story. If you've got a manager in a sweet store, candy store, who's stealing, do you go in and you tell all the staff about it and upset people and all the rest of it, or you just take that person out, say you're fired, and the next day you put your own person in and the store just runs normally? So, that's why I don't buy all this. What we've seen so far, the track record we've seen so far, is do it quietly, don't get attention. We don't want the general public to know about this. We're going to take over the candy store quietly, efficiently, and the ordinary public won't even know what's going on. That's what I think.
Like it. So you're more in a faith of what's going on with the secret trials going on at the White House underneath, and also in Gitmo,
and other countries. I mean, even in Iceland. I mean, Antarctica. I mean, there isn't enough places to do it. And I mean, literally, there's maybe six locations where they're doing this.
The great thing about Antarctica, they probably don't even lock the doors there. If you're not happy with it, just help yourself. Try making an escape.
What did Scott say? I'm just popping out for a minute. I'll be back soon. Yeah. I shan't be long.
Where else have I got? What else have I got there? Simon, we haven't really touched much about the financial reset, the RV. Have you got any updates on anything that's been going on this week?
Well, I'll say this, that when Charlie was saying that we weren't allowed to talk about when our respective projects get funded, and of course Charlie said that he was going to go to Africa and say hello to Michael Tallinger, and that would be the sign that he got funded. And he got told off, because he told us all on a podcast that he got told off for saying that. And he said, look, they can't tell me off more than once, so I'm going to say it again. I would suggest that Charlie won't go to Africa, because if you say that means I'm funded, well, you're basically saying you're funded. So I think what will happen is that Charlie will do other things, and people will have to draw the thread from that. So I certainly won't be going to Africa. I won't be going to Australia or Berlin or anywhere, because that would immediately alert people to the fact that things are happening. So I've also told my group that both publicly and privately, even my top team privately, I will never tell them when Connecting Consciousness has been funded.
Aren't you supposed to get a top hat or something? I keep seeing this in the chat.
Yeah, Charlie was, the Americans 2 years ago, when this was all sort of still fresh and exciting, they were going to send hamburgers to each other as icons.
Yeah.
And Charlie was saying, you should get yourself a top hat. After 2 years of this, I think that aspect is that people are just so war weary that they don't actually think about it anymore, because we've been on this show, or I've been on it since 2015 in terms of the RV. Some people longer than that, some people less than that. But the reality is now that we're so tired that I don't think I could even go into a milliner's and even ask for a top hat. I think I'm so tired of it.
Even if they make them, I had a funny thing.
They make them. Oh, they make them because you've got to get in a black cab. They test them. Do you know that even to this day, every black cab in London that is made, a guy has to sit inside with a top hat, because the rule is there must be 1 inch of space between a guy wearing a top hat and the top of the black cab. So someone's got to make them.
Funny. I was in Manchester when Lucy was doing an event there. And while she was speaking, I wasn't doing anything. So I went around the corner, washed the car, all the salt off it. And I found this really run-down car wash. And I was like, it's about the only one around here. And then as I turned around, there was a black guy walking up the street wearing a bowler hat.
There you go.
This really run-down neighborhood. I said, oi. I said, you're looking very dapper today. He said, thank you, brother. Thank you. But he looked great. You don't see top hats anymore.
Right. Well, was it a bowler or a top
hat?
Bowler
hat. Bowler hat.
It will be a bowler, because in Harlem, bowler hats are incredibly popular, and on the Mardi Gras and things like that, the black people who are performers will often wear a bowler hat, not a top hat, but a bowler hat. In terms of the RV, what I will say is that everything is so secret that a lot of the information that's being given out on these intel sites is entirely wrong. Sometimes it's deliberate, sometimes it's just people making stuff up. Yeah. But those of the audience who've watched it, I suggest to sober yourselves up. I'm just having some fun. To sober yourself up, go onto Google and try and find a restored republic via a GCR from 2015, 2016, 2017, and it hasn't changed. It's saying the money's tomorrow. Tier 5 will go on Tuesday, or Tier 4B, the internet group, will go. So this has been going on for years and years, and it's very much part of a plan to keep the bad guys from having any understanding. You see, look, I don't know how much of insiders have of the grasp of this, but paymasters have files. They have individuals to which come under their umbrella. And what the deep state did was they put fronts up. So they got individuals who had no criminal record to go on and sneak on to these paymaster files, and the idea that they would be funded. Now, in Connecting Consciousness, I have discovered a number of individuals who are deep state, who have been told to join my organization, to put a project in, and then when they get the money, to give it straight to the deep state. So, there's a war going on, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm absolutely determined that the bad guys won't get a single penny of any good money, because we want to destroy evil. So I'm not going to play games. I know what a lot of the audience says, go on, Charlie, be naughty, Charlie, or tell us what's going on and that. And I'm not going to play that game, because this is so serious. It's so life-changing. Yeah. And I'm not going to jeopardize Connecting Consciousness, because we know that if we can hold the line, we will have a lot of Connecting Conscious people, as will Charlie's insiders, who will run their projects. They will have a reason to get up for in the morning. They will be able to do something spectacular. And I am not going to cave in because people write. I mean, I get people, I've had to block so many people. They write to me, when are the bonds going? When is the foreign currencies going to pay out? When is this? When is that? How the hell do I know? How the hell do I know? I know stuff, but I don't know when it's going to happen. There's only about 3 people on the planet who actually know the date of it. And I just say to people, go back to your paymaster, because I know they don't know. But that there's a madness now gripping the network, what we call the RV network. There's a madness where people are just so crazy for money because we've been at it for years. I mean, I say I've been at it since 2015. So I understand, but it's not helpful because it would jeopardize all the good work we want to do. So, you'll have to forgive me, Mahoney, because I'm not going to talk about anything to do with the RV at all.
Oh, well, why don't you just say that, mate, instead of at least
because I wanted to explain. If I just said I'm not going to talk about it, audience might say, A, he doesn't know anything, so he's just saying.
B, he knows a lot. And
or B, he knows a lot. And I wanted to explain what actually is going on in terms of, as a head of an organization, how I'm being impacted by people desperate for information. But the wider role here is protecting what we've created. And I am not going to do anything that would cause difficulties. So no, it's a topic that I choose not to talk about. I mean, Charlie's made it clear, and that's fine. We've signed NDAs. We've signed more than one NDA, and we're signing them, and that either means something or it doesn't. And what Charlie also said was interesting was that when Charlie and I signed our first NDA a long time ago, about 8 months ago, there was a new 44-page NDA that went out to the whole network, the key people, 44 pages. And they never asked Charlie or me to do it. And what they said was, oh, no, you've already signed that when you did. And that showed that, we were in a quite a good position because we were, And I'm not about to break that trust.
Fair enough. You know what? I won't bring that up again. And if it does come up, I'll
ask Charlie. You can be naughty.
Charlie, fair enough.
I'm not going to be naughty.
Right. Let's go somewhere else. We've got one more question. We're at the top of the hour. We all have a shot a few minutes, but we were goofing around for a few minutes. Tell us what you know about the secret space program.
How much time have you got?
Well, I mean, what's the real gist of it? What are they doing? Is it still secret? Is it to protect Earth? Is it, intergalactic alliance? Give us some pointers, Simon. About 4 or 5 minutes we've got.
Okay. When I used to go on stage in front of 500 or 600 people, I would talk about 2 or 3 hours on this. The solar warden protection. Look, the humans have had nuclear powered aircraft since the 1950s, and we've been to the moon as a human race many times, and before 1969. So what happened was that the Navy was very keen to maintain its position, not just the United States Air Force. Now, there's a reason for that, is because if you can think back to Star Trek, all right, the original Star Trek by Gene Roddenberry, the spacecraft were called ships. And there's a real point to that, because the way that on this Earth, the United States Marines and the Navy project their power is through aircraft carriers. So the Navy was very keen to have craft in space that projected the power through the solar system, as indeed it does on the Earth. But there was always a battle between the United States Air Force and the Navy. And so they came to an arrangement. Right. So for years and years and years, this operated secretively. A lot of the German scientists, when Germany was overrun, were put on this. And when Trump became officially the president, it was finally brought under good guy control totally. And Trump went public on it to say to the deep state, we have the technology from space to basically outmaneuver you. And so you could sort of call super soldiers designed to operate in those environments. We know that people like Dick Cheney and the others under the Bush administration had bases on Mars. and they were mining the materials from Mars. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall, and that was made from a book. Well, that actually is spot on, because a mining corporation on Mars. So the public just couldn't believe. It's a see it as science fiction. There are bases on the moon. There are bases on Mars. They're called Adam and Eve, because the true history of Adam and Eve, but I won't go into that. And of course, at this time on Earth, on certain battleships or destroyers, cannons are being removed and laser weapons or energy beam weapons are being replaced, because the last 20 years, they've had energy weapons, which they've had on the spacecraft and the satellites. So it's very real. It contains craft that look sort of humanish, but are not powered. They're powered by cold fusion reactors, and can have force fields. You know, it's literally like that, and the public just couldn't cope with it. And indeed, America is 25 to 50 years ahead of any other country on the planet, and they're not about to give that technology break to anyone else. So it's very real.
Yeah. Should we be worried about that? Is it a good thing or a bad thing, Simon?
Well, Solar Warden, in its true sense, was set up to attempt to prevent. You see, when the White Hats aren't going to like this, so I'll just be quite brief on it because I don't want this topic out at the moment. But an ET is an extraterrestrial, and an ET really means somebody, an alien who lives in real time. So an ET jumps in the spacecraft, travels here. It might take them 500 years. That's an ET. Mm-hmm. But somebody who comes through a portal is an extra dimensional being. So when these spacecraft appear from the fourth dimension into this reality, Solar Warden is a network that detects ripples in the time-space consortium. And then these craft appear, Solar Warden activates that, and then the human craft will have to investigate. Now, if it's an enemy craft, then there's a battle, and there are fights out in space. And
they'll intercept it with a friend or foe.
20 to 30 years. 20 to 30 years, that's been
just to wind that down. So we'll have another chat about that next time. There's been a lot of videos. In fact, I was just looking for one. I was trying to see if I could find it. Electrical storms. There's a lot of people using cell phones now, filming an electrical storm, and as the lightning strikes, you can clearly see the cloaked ship inside the cloud. I'll put some more together because I encounter a lot of these on my online travels, and I'll put some more together and we'll share them on one of the shows.
It's very, very real for since people were Stone Age, running around with stone axes and loincloths. The craft have been cloaked, and what the meteorologists call it is lenticular clouds. They like that word. It's just basically a plate shape, which because the alien craft is generating moisture, etc. So 100% really real. But what happens is when there's an electrical storm, it affects the field that is being placed by the craft, and so just for a fleeting second you can actually see
them. Absolutely right. Simon, what a great show. I'd like to say sincere thanks again for standing in. We get so much covered when you're on, because like I say, it's the roulette of intel with Simon.
Well, it's just the way I'm made, basically. So you can buy from the pound store. It's not pound anymore. It's £1.50 now. But you can buy a roulette wheel. Why don't you?
We'll do that.
The numbers, and you could just spin it just a couple of times.
That's quite fun. I'll experiment with how we could do that, Simon. It's very good.
There's a lot of love to you and the audience, and thanks for everything. And
we'll see you really soon, Simon. Thank you so much for joining us. Great show. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Simon's always a mine of information, and as we keep digging, we get to more and more intel from him. So great show. We've overshot the runway a little bit. Just a real quick one. If you need to get in touch, you know the email address, Mahoney David G at gmail.com. That's it. We'll be back again on, what is it today? It's Wednesday. Is it today? Wednesday? Yeah, we're back again on Saturday here. Hopefully Charlie will make it back from wherever he is. And we'll have another great show. Charlie will be sharing more intel. Let's see what he's got to share on Saturday. I'll be here on Friday with Mahoney Live as usual. And don't forget, guys, if you need ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, B17, the cancer treatment, go to mahoneylive.com and it's all on there while stocks last. Now, I'm going out for dinner to meet some friends. So I'm going to say good night. God bless, Godspeed, and we'll be back very soon. Take care. Stay fit, stay strong, keep pushing back, stay in a higher vibration of love energy, and don't let the big man tell you otherwise. See you soon, guys. Thanks so much. What a great show.